On September 5, 1939, the dynamics of World War II continued to evolve rapidly. Following the United Kingdom's and France's declarations of war against Germany on September 3, the conflict was no longer just a regional skirmish in Eastern Europe. It had become a full-scale global war. As nations mobilized their forces and strategies were hastily developed, the events of September 5 demonstrated how quickly the war was beginning to draw in various global actors. The day was marked by significant military movements, diplomatic maneuvers, and a shifting international landscape that reflected the world's anxious anticipation of the broader implications of the escalating conflict. The British and French war efforts, mobilization and strategic planning. With war now officially declared, the United Kingdom and France were acutely aware of the need to transition from diplomatic posturing to concrete military action. The immediate concern for both governments was how to support Poland, which was being overrun by the German blitzkrieg. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and his war cabinet faced the daunting task of preparing the country for a potentially long and grueling conflict. On September 5, the British government took significant steps to ramp up its military readiness. The Royal Navy intensified its blockade of German ports and began deploying ships to protect Atlantic convoys from potential U-boat attacks. The Royal Air Force, RAF, continued its reconnaissance missions over Germany and Poland, attempting to gather crucial intelligence on German military movements and capabilities. The British Expeditionary Force, BEF, was mobilized and prepared for deployment to France, where it would support French defenses along the Maginot Line. British military planners were already considering the possibility of launching an offensive against German positions, but there was hesitation due to concerns over whether the British Army was adequately prepared and equipped for such operations. For now, the focus remained on building defensive positions and strengthening alliances. In France, the mood was similarly somber and urgent. The French government, led by Prime Minister Édouard Daladier, moved to fully mobilize its military forces. The French army, still heavily influenced by its experiences in World War I, concentrated its efforts on fortifying the Maginot Line. While some elements of the French military leadership argued for a more aggressive stance to relieve pressure on Poland, the overall strategy remained defensive, reflecting both a desire to avoid unnecessary losses and a belief in the strength of France's fortifications. French troops advanced cautiously into the Saar region, testing German defenses but not engaging in full-scale combat. This limited incursion was designed to both demonstrate solidarity with Poland and test German military readiness without provoking a larger engagement. German military strategy: continued aggression and consolidation. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler and the German High Command were emboldened by their rapid progress in Poland and the perceived hesitancy of the Allies. The Wehrmacht continued its aggressive push deeper into Polish territory, with the aim of quickly securing a decisive victory before the Western Allies could mount any meaningful response. On September 5, German forces continued their advance toward Warsaw and other major Polish cities. The strategy of blitzkrieg, lightning war, was proving devastatingly effective. German panzer divisions, supported by air assaults from the Luftwaffe, targeted Polish defenses, communication lines, and infrastructure. The goal was to create chaos, disorient the Polish military, and force a rapid surrender. Meanwhile, German propaganda efforts continued to portray the invasion as a defensive action against Polish aggression. Joseph Goebbels' Ministry of Propaganda worked tirelessly to maintain domestic support and framed the war as a just and necessary endeavor for Germany's survival and prosperity. The narrative emphasized German strength and unity in the face of international opposition, and sought to diminish any domestic dissent or fear of a broader war. Poland's plight: a nation under siege. For Poland, September 5, 1939, was another day of intense struggle and mounting despair. The Polish government and military were increasingly isolated and desperate for Allied support that seemed unlikely to materialize in time to make a difference. The rapid advance of German forces had already cut off much of Poland's access to the outside world, and key cities were either under siege or preparing for the worst. The Polish High Command, under Marshal Edward Rydz Śmigły, continued to coordinate defensive operations despite being overwhelmed by the speed and ferocity of the German assault. Polish forces attempted several counterattacks, most notably around the Bzura River, where they sought to disrupt German supply lines and communications. However, these efforts were largely in vain against the overwhelming firepower and coordination of the German blitzkrieg. In Warsaw, preparations for a siege intensified. The city's residents, soldiers, and civil defense units hastily constructed barricades and dug trenches in anticipation of a German attack. Despite the increasingly dire situation, there was a palpable sense of defiance and determination among the Polish people, many of whom were determined to resist the German onslaught for as long as possible. International reactions. A widening conflict. As the conflict in Europe escalated, the international community reacted with a mix of concern, caution, and strategic calculation. The potential for the war to spread beyond Europe became a growing concern for many nations. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt continued to navigate a delicate path between neutrality and support for the Allies. On September 5th, Roosevelt issued a formal proclamation of neutrality, reaffirming the United States' desire to remain out of the conflict while also signaling moral support for the nations fighting against Nazi aggression. This stance reflected the isolationist sentiment prevalent among the American public, who were wary of being drawn into another European war. However, Roosevelt's administration was also keenly aware of the potential threat posed by a Nazi-dominated Europe and began laying the groundwork for increased military preparedness. In the Soviet Union, the leadership under Joseph Stalin remained publicly non-committal about the unfolding events in Western Europe. However, behind the scenes, Soviet military and political planners were closely monitoring the situation in Poland. The secret protocol of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact had effectively divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. As German forces advanced deeper into Poland, the Soviet leadership prepared to move into their designated sphere, ensuring that they would secure territory in line with the agreement reached with Hitler. In Italy, Benito Mussolini continued to advocate for peace while cautiously supporting Germany. On September 5th, Mussolini reiterated his proposal for an international conference to negotiate an end to the conflict, positioning Italy as a potential mediator. However, this initiative was largely dismissed by the Western Allies, who saw it as an attempt by Mussolini to buy time and avoid committing Italy to the war effort. In Japan, the government closely monitored the European conflict, recognizing its potential impact on Japanese strategic interests in Asia. With Europe at war, Japan saw an opportunity to expand its influence in the Pacific and potentially exploit the weakened position of European colonial powers. The Japanese leadership debated the merits of closer alignment with Germany and Italy versus pursuing their own regional ambitions independently. Media coverage and public perception. The media played a crucial role in shaping public perception of the conflict, providing updates on military developments and offering analysis on the potential implications of the war. In the United Kingdom, the BBC continued to provide regular updates on the military situation in Poland and the mobilization efforts at home. British newspapers like The Times and The Daily Express focused on the resolve of the British people and the readiness of the military to face the challenges ahead. Editorials emphasized the need for national unity and the importance of supporting the war effort, even as the realities of the conflict began to set in. In France, newspapers such as Le Figaro and L'Humanite covered the ongoing mobilization of French forces and the limited incursion into the Saarland. The French press reflected a mixture of determination and anxiety, with some commentators expressing confidence in France's ability to withstand a German attack, while others warned of the need for greater coordination with Britain and more aggressive action to support Poland. In Germany, the state-controlled media continued to push the narrative of a defensive war, emphasizing the righteousness of Germany's actions and the successes of the Wehrmacht in Poland. Newspapers like Völkischer Beobachter and Der Angriff ran front-page stories on the military victories and portrayed Hitler as a strong leader defending Germany against foreign aggression. The propaganda efforts aimed to maintain public morale and support for the war, despite the growing awareness of the potential costs of a prolonged conflict. In the United States, newspapers such as the New York Times and the Washington Post continued to provide extensive coverage of the events in Europe, offering detailed analyses of military movements and diplomatic developments. The American press remained largely neutral but began to explore the potential implications of the conflict for U.S. foreign policy and global stability. Opinion pieces debated the merits of isolationism versus engagement, reflecting the ongoing debate within American society about the nation's role in the world. The impact on global public opinion. The events of September 5, 1939, further solidified the reality that a new world war had begun, and public opinion around the globe continued to shift in response. In Britain and France, the initial shock of the German invasion was giving way to a grim determination to stand firm against Nazi aggression. The mobilization efforts and the first military actions against Germany underscored the resolve of both nations to uphold their commitments and defend against the threat posed by Hitler's expansionist ambitions. In the United States, public opinion remained predominantly in favor of neutrality, but there was also a growing recognition of the potential impact of the war on global peace and security. The Roosevelt administration's cautious approach reflected this ambivalence, balancing support for the Allies with a desire to avoid direct involvement in the conflict. In Germany, the government's propaganda efforts were initially successful in rallying public support for the war, but there were already undercurrents of anxiety about the potential consequences of a conflict with multiple major powers. As the realities of the war began to unfold, the German population would face increasing hardships and challenges. Conclusion: the onset of a global conflict. September 5, 1939, marked another pivotal moment in the early days of World War II. The rapid escalation of the conflict, the ongoing German advance in Poland, and the various international responses highlighted the complexity and interconnectedness of the global situation. This day was a moment of both action and reflection, as the world grappled with the implications of a new and unprecedented conflict. For the nations involved, it was a time of rapid mobilization and strategic positioning, as they prepared for the uncertainties of a war that would soon engulf much of the globe. For the people of the world, it was a time of fear, hope, and resolve, as they faced the prospect of another devastating conflict and the challenges that lay ahead. The events of September 5th set the stage for a war that would reshape the political, social, and economic landscape of the 20th century, leaving an indelible mark on history.